Could you say a few words on loving kindness, on metta, particularly sort of self-metta?
Well, the first thing perhaps to say is that although often we refer to cultivating loving kindness or developing loving kindness, I think on the whole people find it much easier to not think of it in those terms, to not think of metta or loving kindness as something that they have to sort of go find, or that they've got to put an effort into bringing into being. And that is because a lot of the time we're perhaps not feeling particularly mettaful. Maybe we don't even know how we're feeling. And so I think the starting place is just being authentic to how you really are, what you're really experiencing. And actually that is a tremendous act of self-metta, just doing that. So for example, some body awareness, some focusing around the heart area, finding out where the heart area is for you, for any one person, which might be just below the neck, or it might be in the belly, but to explore where they have some sense of opening or closing when they're in any kind of emotional state, really, is worth knowing. So that sort of exploration is an act of self-metta. Of course it works for some people to say, may I be well, may I be happy, but it can so easily end up that we're sort of parroting these things without really believing it. So if we do use a phrase like may I be well, may I be happy, may I progress, in between we really do need to focus on the heart area and to listen to the quiet voice that doesn't usually get heard inside us. So I would say that we're used to the language of thoughts and concepts, and actually that's a very loud language. It's something with a very loud voice. But inside us there's something much more subtle with a quiet voice, maybe that doesn't even have a language as such. Or if it has a language, it's one without any words. And we're learning in self-metta to be sensitive to how to access that. Sometimes I think of it as a kind of still, small, quiet centre right deep inside of us. That is basically okay, whatever. Because I think if we are in touch with that, even if we're unhappy or depressed, sad, whatever we're experiencing, if we access this very quiet part of ourselves, we know that things are all right. You know, that if we've got any kind of Buddhist knowledge, we know that everything changes, that everything is impermanent. It's all going to move on anyway. And we can trust ourselves. So I think with metta, it's good to look for a sense of confidence in oneself, what one is confident in. And the only thing we really can be confident in is an authentic sense of ourselves that's not pretending to be something else, but that also is not wanting something other than we are experiencing. And let's say, for example, we get in touch with some sadness, and the first stage of metta for ourselves, we've got in touch with our body, our heart centre, we know we're quite sad, we've wished ourselves well, we've listened to the response, and our response maybe isn't even that empathic. Maybe it's sort of, well, you don't deserve to be well because you don't look after yourself, or whatever it is. So we, with sensitivity, with tenderness, we hold that as well. And then as we bring other people towards ourselves in the other stages, it's like we invite them. We know that they too have those states of mind. We invite them into our awareness as we are. So for example, let's say you meet with a friend and they say to you, how are you today? And you say, I'm fine. And actually you're not fine. Does that help communication between you and the person? It puts something false there immediately. But sometimes we don't want to say, well, I'm not fine, because maybe we don't want to sound gloomy or something. But actually, if we're really authentic and we say how we are, it can lead to quite a deep level of communication. So in the metta bhavana, when we bring other people towards us, and I say that quite purposefully, I like to think in the metta bhavana that we don't have to go out to people, that we invite them in. Because if you think of going out and finding people, or going out to where they are, or, imagining them when they're happy on the beach, or whatever it is, it's almost like we lose touch with ourselves. And the most important thing with metta is staying in touch. How are we at all times? So in between stages, we can bring attention back to ourselves. Has anything changed? How am I feeling now? But having this sense of inviting people into our field of awareness with each of the stages, I just think is a much more self-metaphor thing to do, and a more genuine thing in relation to them. And particularly if we can work with it in a very concrete way. So quite a helpful thing, I think, with, say, the second stage is, if we're in the shrine room or wherever we're meditating, we could imagine the door opening, our friend coming in, and we know that when we see somebody that we're fond of, something happens in the body. I know I go on about body a lot, but something happens in the body. There's a sense of uplift, of, there's a sense of pleasure. And so to experience that in meditation is very useful, because it brings the metta bhavana alive. That is how we feel when our friend comes into the room. So we could imagine them, for example, getting a mat and cushions and sitting down beside us. No big deal, they're just going to be with us however they are. Yes, there are different ways of working with the metta bhavana, and I think sometimes it's more appropriate to have reflection, or have it more conceptual than at other times. Sometimes if we're spacious and quiet and we've maybe done some other meditation, maybe we can have a very spacious metta. But sometimes we have to bring reality, a sort of insight really to the practice. We have to encourage ourselves to see things how they really are. So if I give an example for each of those stages, well, with ourself, let's say we're not very happy, well, we could just simply bring to mind that isn't going to always be the case, it's going to change. Remind ourselves of impermanence. Or we might go a step further and question ourselves, who is this that is unhappy? What is unhappy in me? Who is unhappy in me? And, just enter the confusion and the mystery of how we construct ourselves all the time, and then identify with those states of mind. Then in the second stage, with metta for our good friend, we might notice that the kind of thoughts we bring to mind is, say, how we enjoy our friend's company. And it might, if we look carefully, have more to do with us than our friend. At times that might be fine, but at times we might think, maybe I'm doing this in quite a selfish way. Maybe I'm not allowing my friend, I'm not really seeing my friend as they are. I'm seeing them in relation to me. So, more room for insight there. And then in the third stage, with the neutral person, well, we can bring to mind, I suppose, just what we share in terms of human experience. The minute that we look at anybody, it's very hard not to make all sorts of assumptions about them, who they are, what they do for a living, all sorts of things, whether we like them, whether they're our sort of person. And, you know, realising that we do that, seeing that we do that, and being aware that this person that we're making assumptions about, well, they might be much more like us than we give them credit for. You know, they certainly have a lot of the pleasures and pains that we have in our life. And just appreciating that, you know, is an act of metta. And then in the fourth stage, one of the things that I quite often do is, I think when you bring somebody to mind that you don't feel comfortable with, that you find difficult, one of the first things that happens is, for me anyway, a bit of a justification. You know, well, I don't like this person, but surely nobody would like this person, really. Or justifying, going over in my mind perhaps why I don't like them, what they've done, bearing a grudge or whatever it is. But if I turn that around and look in my own experience, I might, for example, contemplate, what is it in me that I'm holding on to that refuses to be open to this person? What would I have to let go of in myself to do that? I do find that useful. So you can see in this way, you know, we can do the metta bhavana and gain great insight just by contemplating aspects of Dharma that are relevant. The fifth stage is an interesting one. Obviously it's the pinnacle of the whole practice, and ideally when we are familiar and have a lot of experience of the metta bhavana, we will by that stage feel very open-hearted, inclusive, and you know, perhaps we can do it in quite an open, organic way. You know, just this sense of warmth and openness flowing from ourselves. But of course, often it isn't like that. Often it can get a bit vague. I hear that a lot from people that are new to the metta bhavana. They sort of lose the impetus because it's a bit like the whole cosmos and all living beings, you know. Almost like they're too small to meet any idea of metta for all beings. So one of the things that certainly I recommend to do at times anyway is to bring to mind some group of people, some class of people or beings that you definitely can feel an empathic warmth towards. So it might be all dogs who haven't had a walk today. It might be all nurses who have been on night duty and now can't get to sleep because the sun's shining outside. You know, something quite specific, but that we can feel empathy for. Or worms that are going to be dug up this afternoon. You know, it doesn't matter what it is. The important thing is that we can make an emotional connection with it. I mean, another helpful way, of course, is to start from where you are and the people in the room with you, or the people in the vicinity. But I think choosing a class of people or beings that you feel for is makes it more approachable and makes an easier, you know, certainly an easier starting point, I think.